Hi everyone, my name is Lena and I'm really excited to be hosting this Q&A with Jim and Sam about their film After So Many Days. The session is going to last approximately 20 minutes, and first I'll be asking Jim and Sam some questions, and then we'll open the floor to the audience. And if you're in the audience and have any questions, then please do share them, but preferably in the Q&A section rather than the chat box so that it's all clear. Hi, Jim and Sam, how are you?
Yeah,
Good.
hi, Lena.
How are you?
Good, great. Really excited to be talking to you tonight from London. So let's dive straight into it. Your film has been described as the perfect time capsule of pre-pandemic times. And I think that's something really nice to hear and nice to watch now. And I guess it's because it allows audiences to relive the freedom of being able to travel on impulse, to attend concerts, and all those wonderful things that we can't really do at the moment. How do you feel about the timing of your film's release?
I mean, there's so many feelings about the timing. I think there's part of you as musicians who do like to tour, and also as filmmakers who, when you make something, it's so wonderful to be able to be in front of an audience and experience that kind of thing. But I do think there's something about this film in particular that what's really cool about it is that it can travel when we can't. We never knew that by going to all of these places and doing all these things that it would be some kind of time capsule, and it's kind of strangely fitting that it is. So yeah, in a way, it kind of works out. But it's all bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarre, and also, I think music, film, art in general is kind of this light in the dark. A lot of times when you're going through something, you have this thing, and I feel like it's a really dark, weird time that we're all being isolated, and it's nice that this film can kind of, hopefully, be a little bit of light
Yeah.
in this strange time. So yeah, we're happy with the
That
timing
part of
feels
it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing that it can have such a life of its own. And I mean, on your journey, as we watch the film, there's so many incredible moments. So it would be great to talk a bit about that. What was your most unexpected or one of the strangest places that you found yourself on your tour?
I mean, I think generally speaking, the most unexpected place was Eastern Europe. I think when we set out for the tour, we knew we'd go to Sweden because we had had a history there. We knew we'd play throughout the U.S. We hoped we'd go to the U.K. And we had one of the cool things about this tour was it kept snowballing in ways we didn't expect
At all.
at all. And we had gotten a message from this great guy named Bartek out of nowhere on Facebook that said, "Hi, I see the tour you're doing. I book shows in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland. Would you be interested in coming here?" And we said, yeah. It was we were in Operation Yes, so we just were saying yes to everything. And
He was like, "What are you gonna need?"
yeah, he said, "What do you need?" And we
Yeah.
said, "Well, we need X amount of dollars a night. We need food, a place to stay, and here's a month. We have this month open. Let us know what you can find." And a week later, he came back and had booked 30 shows back to back in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Eastern, all throughout that area. And I think part of that was just
Really unexpected.
unexpected and exciting.
And I do think, I mean, obviously there's so many places throughout the entire tour that are unexpected, just strange places that we end up playing. All of those were very unexpected. But yeah, I think Eastern Europe as a whole was kind of this thing out of left field.
Yeah, and then to be able to play these songs that we've been playing for years in front of a brand new audience that speaks an entirely different language, and to see how the music was connecting to them, and the parts of our performance that were connecting with them was a really kind of inspiring time.
And obviously cows were probably pretty unexpected too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
of
I don't
course.
think we expected to play for them.
Yeah.
Great. One thing that I really loved about your film was that you made such a clear effort to incorporate the more mundane, disappointing even moments of the whole journey. So I'm wondering how challenging was it to have to balance honesty and the entertainment factor, which is necessary in any film?
Yeah.
It was a total dance, but I think going into it, something that we both talked about a lot was that we want to show the warts and the scars, and we didn't want to just make a commercial for our music. That was really important to us, and we wanted to kind of, pull
Yeah.
back the wool on the things that are real and that are hard and that are relatable to a lot of people going after anything. But as people who are storytellers, we wanted to keep it entertaining and exciting. And ultimately, we are live performers. And that's, I think constantly in a live show, we're always trying to find that balance of, the funny and the sad and the real. And I think we wanted to kind of capture that for the film in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the disappointment factor that you mentioned, we felt when we were making this that we had an obligation to every musician we'd ever played with, to any other person that's out there that's kind of going through their own uphill battle, own struggle with trying to sort of get their music out there or their film out there or whatever it might be. So I think when we were making the film and making choices, in the back of our minds, it was we kind of had this invisible audience in the back of our minds going, is this truthful? Like, is this really how it is? And I think a lot of times it isn't as shiny as we all make it out to be.
Or
So
that we post on our, like, we all have our Instagram feed of these moments that all look so wonderful, and we really wanted to show, like, hey, like, this is actually what happens behind those moments and that kind of thing. So yeah.
I mean, totally, that definitely shines through. And one of the things I was thinking about constantly was that it's so challenging to make a story arc out of the raw material of life, which is exactly what you sort of probably had to do at the end in the editing process. And the most basic example of that is that, like, any film or novel has to conclude, whereas life goes on. So how did you contend with that, particularly the conclusion bit in your film?
yeah, that was something I think that uh, was really challenging, and we went back and forth. I mean, I think there's there was like a version where a lot of people say, hey, they wonder at the end of the thing, did you guys get the record deal? They ask because we have that conversation, or there's certain questions that are left a little unopen. And I think it helped, right? I will say it helped because we had 365 days of shows, and it felt kind of, you know, when in doubt, it felt natural to end with that final show and sort of where we were at that moment, and kind of when we were in the bedroom reflecting. And I think that feeling, and I feel like we made that decision, and I look back at that decision when we watch the movie or we hear people watch it, that emotion and that feeling is sort of the thing you're left with and that kind of sustains when the movie ends. And uh,
Yeah,
I think,
that's
yeah,
that's kind of like, the way we felt in the bed at the very end is really how we felt at the end of this tour. And it's a moment in time. And I think in a way, of course, life goes on, and of course careers go on, and all these things change, but we really wanted to, where were we during that time at the end of this thing? Like, where did it lead to? Like, how were we feeling? And I think we wanted to leave part of it open, as of like, who knows what's going to happen, but like, this is what we have learned, and like, this is where the journey has taken us. And we thought it was going to look very different than what it did, but like, we're so grateful that it looks the way that it does. And I think that's kind of the conclusion that we really wanted to, you know, make.
I mean, building on that, how involved were you in the actual editing process? Because I'm sure it's one thing to experience those ups and downs, and then after it's all over, to see yourselves as characters in a film must be quite weird as well. Yeah, how involved were you in that?
so I was the editor, as
Oh,
well as a good friend of ours, Kyle Weber, as well, who did some of the editing as well. And then also Sam was with me, but my hand was on the mouse, but Sam was here the entire time.
and
And
and Natalia Anderson as well. I mean, we really, the entire process from the minute we came home and went through all of our footage, and we kind of made an assembly, and then we brought on our two friends as sort of an outside perspective. But really it was the entire time, just from start to finish, everything.
Yeah. So in that regard, I mean, I think initially what was really cool is we had this memory of what happened, right? You live an experience, and then a lot of times because there was 365 days of footage, so much footage that you can't sit and look at it when in real time. So you would have these things happen, these conversations, you'd put it away, and then you would remember something. Sam has a really good photographic memory, so we would be kind of editing, and then she'd be able to go, oh, I remember this conversation, or I remember you had this kind of look, or whatever the thing is. And she'd be able to like, we'd go to our spreadsheet of days and we'd pinpoint it. We'd be like, oh, okay, we were in Berlin and this is what happened. Did we even go to Berlin? Yeah, we did. I couldn't even remember if we went to Berlin. But that process of rewatching it and kind of seeing something, and then there's those moments where in your brain you took the greatest footage ever. You had this experience where you thought it was, we have it, this is going to be this scene, and then you dig up the footage and you look at it and you go, it's not, it doesn't reflect the emotional thing we went through, so you have to look elsewhere.
Yeah, so much of the time that would happen where we had these amazing, incredible moments on the tour where we thought like this is going to encapsulate everything, and then you look at it and you're just like, oh, we have nothing. So it was just this dance of like finding other things that kind of would come close to that. And I think because we filmed ourselves every single day, we got used to this the camera being this third member of the band. And I think when we were editing the film, the same thing happened where, you know, we began to look at these characters, even though they were us. You know, after a while, I would just look at it like almost like it wasn't us and just try to like beat this story out. It was hard, and that's why it was really nice to have an outside perspective of like, you know, kind of that push and pull as well. But yeah, that's ultimately how it all went down.
Totally.
Amazing. So we have a question from the audience. How easy or hard was it to make that decision to drop it all and go on that unbelievable tour?
You want me to take this one?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the big things when you're in a partnership of any kind, there's a compromise usually that has to happen, right? And usually somebody wants to do something more than the other, or you want to eat at a certain restaurant and the other person doesn't want to, or whatever. It could be as mundane as that, and it could be as big as what's the album going to be called? In this situation, both of us were kind of latched onto it, and neither of us were backing out. And I think that made it really easy, that I could look at the person that I respect and I love to work with, and I really care about what they think. The fact that they're reflecting my enthusiasm made it like a no question. Yeah. Like it didn't matter. And you do the pros and cons and of anything.
It was a really spontaneous decision too. We had the idea brewing for a long time, but then we went away one night, like 2 months before the tour even started. Like, I think we went to Joshua Tree and we were like, okay, are we going to do this? And we just said yes. And there was kind of no turning back once we said yes. We had gotten like, I think 20 shows or something. We're like, okay, we've got 20, we can do this.
Yeah. I think with a big thing like this, I think if you plan too far in advance, you can talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And I was just saying to a friend of mine, you know, what's really cool about this project specifically is that a lot of people we met along the way were in similar spots in their life where they were feeling frustrated or in a rut or wanted to do something to kind of break free. And I think what we were doing was inspiring people to start their own projects. And, a friend called yesterday saying, I have this idea, it's this podcast and I want to do this thing. And I said, this is not my quote, but I said, do the simplest thing first. And the simplest thing first is record an episode of your podcast. Just do it. Record one episode, start editing it, and then you're off. But if you sit and you go, I'm going to plan on how to record it and I'm going to do all this, it's like
we used to plan a little bit.
Plan a little.
We could have used planning a little bit more.
Fine.
No, well, it sounds like you had a lot planned to make it work financially. And I mean, it's definitely logistically, but I see your point and definitely appreciate it. Something else that I was wondering was, while you were on your tour, did you ever feel that the camera and the film were sort of taking over, or on the contrary, did the camera act as a sort of glue holding the process together? Like, how did your relationship to the physical camera and the presence of the film on your minds change and influence you in general?
I would say, generally speaking, there was an accountability that I think the camera sort of brought to the table, which I thought was really nice to have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think some people go out and they go, I'm going to write a diary entry every day. I got to write in my diary, and then you journal. You know, the camera was our journal. The camera was this thing that every day we had to use it. And I think what's really cool looking back at our experience was throughout the film, there are these landscape moments where there's a microphone set up and we kind of walk in and and we use those throughout the film. But those were actually just creative moments during the tour that we wanted to shoot a music video. So we would set a microphone up and we record them. So they were the kind of these isolated music video moments. But that was born out of the fact that we had this camera. And I think any creative person, you give a violinist a paintbrush and a canvas, give them 5 minutes, they'll probably start painting. So I think for us, this was just another kind of instrument that.
But it took some time. Like I think the first 30, 40 days of the tour, it was awkward. And we were capturing the wrong things, whatever that even means. But it took a minute to understand like what we wanted to use it for. But it was so great to have it. But it was uncomfortable at first, and then little by little, it was just like, okay, we play a show every day, we pull out the camera every day, we pull out multiple cameras every day, and you just let it roll, and it became part of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably a question you've been asked a lot, but how has After So Many Days changed you?
You could start.
I think one way that it's changed me is to there's like two extremes, right? Because there's one version which is just be in the moment and every day, show up to every day and show up fully and really be there and be present. That's one piece. But then there's another thing, I think, as a film, if we're talking about After So Many Days and the film and the tour, all of it combined, it's trusting in the process, I think, is something that I don't think I fully understood prior to doing the tour. You know, I have a whole new respect for filmmaking and filmmakers who just are sitting behind a computer screen editing for hours, for days, for weeks, with no audience, with no one to connect to see it, and having to trust that scene you're cutting and recutting and the sequence, trusting that the story and the arc and it's all working and it's all worthwhile. So I think that's probably a way that I changed is being a little bit more patient with the process.
Yeah, I think for me, I think before we went on the tour, I think there was this feeling, and I still get this feeling sometimes of like, oh my God, like what's next? Like, what are we going to do? Like kind of feeling aimless. And I feel like now that I've done this tour and we've made this film, I'm like, okay, like I've taught myself, like I know how to commit to something. I know that I can see it through. Like I don't doubt myself in that way anymore. Whereas before, I think there was a bit of a fear, or when that fear creeps in, because that fear, we're all human, and that fear creeps in, it's like, okay, I have a toolbox. I have something to point to and to look at and be like as a reminder of, I can do this. I've done this before, kind of thing. So for me, that's a big takeaway.
Amazing. So another question from the audience. What are your plans for now? More music, more filmmaking, or both?
Well, definitely more music first. But I think maybe a little bit of both, and I think maybe other areas as well.
Yeah, I think it's the storytelling. I think it's trying to expand on telling stories in whatever way we can. And I think what's really nice is music is such a part of so many different ways of storytelling, whether it's in film or musicals or music videos or live performance. And I think music is our first language. So that's where we're going to go back to first and really kind of zero in and focus in. But we're
now
just
that
going to
have this kind of, now that we have these other tentacles, I think it's about exploring the music within those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of vague, but you know.
No. Well, that's the lesson you learned from the movie, right? Vague is okay sometimes. I think this is a good moment to wrap up since we've discussed the future as well. But Jim and Sam, it was incredible speaking to you after watching the film, especially, and seeing you in real life and having this chance to discuss it with you. Thank you for answering all these questions, and the best of luck as you move forward with your projects.
Thank you
so
so
much,
much,
Lena.
Lena.